Welcome to Dyspraxic Rosie Writes, a channel where we talk about dyspraxia, chronic illness, and the writing life. In today's video, we're going to go over some resources around dyspraxia and also share some of my own lived experience with this, given that I'm dyspraxic myself. And as you listen to this video, it happens to be Dyspraxia Awareness Week.
This Polaroid picture you were looking at right here is me in the 1990s. In 1994, the year I was diagnosed with dyspraxia. And yeah, forgive the quality. It is a picture from the 90s, so it's a Polaroid. And this was from the year I was diagnosed. But I wanted to really take you into a personal glimpse of that through reading the opening 2 paragraphs of my debut book, Stumbling Through Space and Time. And if you do want to hear more of that, of course, I will link to links where you can buy the book itself if you feel like that would be a very useful resource for you. Stumbling Through Space and Time, Living Life with Dyspraxia by Rosemary Richings. Introduction. In the many years that have passed since my dyspraxia diagnosis, it's been rare for me to talk to anyone who reacts to my disability with anything besides confusion. So let's start with a quick definition. Dyspraxia is a disability that gives me an underdeveloped sense of space, time, and coordination. On an average day, I react to verbal instructions and limitation of my environment at a slower rate than my peers. As a result, I can't process verbal instructions and conversations in environments that are too noisy, busy, or filled with too many sensory distractions. Another key attribute of my disability is my lack of fine and gross motor skills. Activities like team sports, arts and crafts, and learning a new dance routine are a challenge. No matter how many times people try to explain it to me, I constantly mix up the difference between up and down, left and right. I also misjudge how much time is needed to travel to specific locations and get lost easily. To compensate for my lack of navigation skills, I have a photographic memory of minor details of streets, landmarks, and buildings. Many of my peers might see the color of an awning or graffiti on a statue once and forget about it. I, however, remember exactly what a street or statue I only saw once, looks like a decade later.
So what resources should you be checking out? I would, of course, as the author of this book, Stumbling Through Space and Time, start off by doing my author duty of recommending my book, Stumbling Through Space and Time, as an introduction to my own perspective in particular, which I think honestly is one of the only Canadian perspectives published on dyspraxia, but also it's been quite useful for quite a few people outside Canada as well. But besides that, I'm of course going to share with you a few others. I would start by mentioning Dyspraxia Magazine. So Dyspraxia Magazine is run by Crystal Shaw. We met during COVID. We started to be involved in quite a few of the same virtual events and collaborated on quite a few advocacy efforts. And she is doing some amazing work on making dyspraxia resources that are actually written through the lens of dyspraxic people available to anyone with internet access. And that's amazing. So I will link to that in the description. And that is a very useful starting point for getting to know more the every day, day to day, about what it means to live as a dyspraxic person. Although she is, of course, based in the UK, I think what makes this such a great resource to check out and to read and to subscribe to is that she has challenged herself to go outside of the UK perspective, which is the most represented in terms of dyspraxia, simply because a lot of the really good resources and research is there. And it has been great to even, like, for example, I once read an article by a woman based over in Saudi Arabia who shared her own experiences as a dyspraxic adult and what it's like to live a day-to-day experience as a dyspraxic person in the environment of Saudi Arabia. And there have been quite a few other surprising perspectives that allow us to go far beyond the most overrepresented perspectives of Ireland and the UK. Caged in Chaos is an essential one to recommend because of the fact that Victoria Biggs, the author, is very much a pioneer in the eyes of so many dyspraxic content creators and advocates and writers in the area of writing about the lived experience of being dyspraxic and not having the angle of being a researcher or medical practitioner, but rather someone who is speaking about the day-to-day. And the even more incredible part is that she is writing about growing up with dyspraxia, particularly in the context of adolescence and going into young adulthood. She wrote this when she was only like 16 or 17 years old, and then she did a whole new version in which she expanded on the book as soon as she started university. And so she was around like her early 20s by then. And so it is very much one of the first traditionally published books that its merit is on the basis of having dyspraxic young person's perspective, talking about being a dyspraxic young person. Although if you're not a dyspraxic person under the age of 30, which is when Victoria wrote it, it's still highly recommended, given that it is wisdom beyond her years when she first wrote it in terms of understanding the complexities and the issues that are unique to dyspraxic young people, and not just like the general idea of growing up as an adolescent, but how dyspraxia fits into the picture, and a lot of really great life advice that really brings so much about it into perspective. I also wanted to bring to your attention a children's book called We Are the Dyspraxic Champions, which focuses on all of these children in this illustration on this cover here. And they're all young dyspraxic people growing up in the UK. And it really has a very realistic yet celebratory tone on what it really, really means to grow up as a dyspraxic child and exactly what that diversity of how it can affect your experiences can look like. And although it is aimed at children, because of course, obviously it's very illustration focused and very simple language written, I think it is a great way for anyone who is trying to break the barrier of understanding when it comes to understanding dyspraxia, who just wants a really, really simple language view of what dyspraxia actually means. I also, I do not have a copy of those books right now, but I had a chance to read advanced copies of them. So I will define them under honorable mentions. Maxine Francis did a great book on what it really means to be a woman with ADHD and dyspraxia right now, where she looks at her experiences, but it is also counterbalanced with all kinds of useful lessons she learned along the way. Then, last but not least, there is Lotte O'Neill's book, which I will put on screen here. And it is a journey through a dyspraxic person's world, I believe. I will double check that in editing. And it is a graphic novel which puts to use her very, very immensely talented ways of explaining dyspraxia in such a coherent way. Yet also she uses really engaging illustrations, which I could see being very approachable and friendly for audiences of all ages who are just starting to learn about this for the very first time. This book is highly recommended. It is one of the first fantasy fiction books I have seen that is not only written by a dyspraxic author, but has a main character that is actually dyspraxic herself. And she goes on this incredible journey of meeting all these mythical characters, in which she gets to do because of her neurodivergence. It is seen as somewhat of the power that allows her to see all kinds of mythical creatures. And it is set in Edinburgh, and it is done by the same lady who did A Kind of Spark, which was immensely popular on BBC and the American counterpart to that, and also Canadian counterpart to that on the streaming services on all three countries. And so if you're looking for an introduction to dyspraxia through the lens of a character that is very accurate and very strong representation, like A Charm, but also its follow-up book, Like a Curse, is worth checking out. Many of the references that I mentioned are included in the description for this video, so if you would like to check them out or recommend these to somebody that you know, then go straight to the description. And I hope you found that video useful, and I hope you had a good Dyspraxia Awareness week. Happy reading, happy writing, my friends.